Hello and welcome to Discover Dorico in November 2024. In today's session, I hope you will acquire some knowledge about vocal and choral music, including handbells. We'll be looking at various ways to set up the instrumentation in Dorico for singers and choirs of the vocal and ringing type. I'll be using Dorico Pro 5, but for much of this session you can also use Dorico Elements, SE or Dorico for iPad if you want to follow along as we go. My colleagues will be monitoring the live chat, so if you have questions please put them in there. There are some links in the description below this video to useful resources that I'll mention as we go through the session, including the Dorico resources page on our blog. If you want to come back and watch the session again, it will always be available on this same URL link. You can pause, rewind, or come back and catch up at any time. After the session, I'll add chapter links so you can skip to specific sections. If they aren't there yet, then you're probably watching live, so come back later. And don't forget, on YouTube you can click on the cog for settings such as the playback speed, so you can speed me up or slow me down, as well as the shortcut K to pause, J to go back a few seconds, and L to skip forward. Also, please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified of other videos and live streams that we have planned. So let's get started. I do have also the live chat open here, so I'll try and keep an eye on that, but as Daniel's just said in the chat, he'll also be answering questions on there as well. I can see some people in there saying they're looking forward to this one. I think, and I've had a few questions from people and to help mould this session as well. But yes, please ask other questions as you go along, and hopefully we'll include those. I'm going to start from the beginning of how to set things up from that point. So if there are kind of more advanced things that we don't get to today, then we can always do another session on a similar topic to this as well. No, if you slow down or speed up, it doesn't change the pitch. I always stay the same. Sorry. So, as I said, we got our resources page, and the link for this is below. And I'll probably add some more things to this after the session as well with some links. There's a couple of files I'm using as well that maybe I could share those if they will be of interest as well. But I'm going to be starting from the Steinberg Hub, and I think for at least the beginning here we'll use the choral section for the templates and probably SATB with piano. So there's a number of choral options already in here that you can use, and these obviously are a very good place to start. But you can add your own instruments and things if you need to as well. And of course, if you're using, a choir with orchestra, we'll look a little bit at that kind of thing as well, if that's the kind of setup you'd need. So I'm just going to press the create project. So the choir SATB with piano is the one I had selected. So we'll use this one. And here we go. So I just want to initially also look at kind of what's been set up here and what you might need, because this setup here isn't always what you're going to need. So what are some of the other options and that kind of thing? Somebody's asking about anyway, Daniel will answer those, no worries. So in setup mode here, now I am going to use a few shortcuts and things today, and I'll explain some of those as we go along, but only a few. So as usual, you've got Command or Control 2 for write mode and Command or Control 1 for setup. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just in setup mode here, and we've got the players set up here. So these are the ones in the default template that we had. So this template, you'll notice hopefully, as well as the singers being added, they've been added as section players. And that's because really, with the choir, you probably don't have individual singers, and actually the samples that are often used for playback are a group of singers. If you do want to change that, you can of course change that, but the defaults in the template here are set up for section players. And the other useful advantage for that is that because they're section players, if you need divisi, so if you need to at any point to split the sopranos into more than one group, then you can do that because they're already section players. If you do need to change them, or you've set something up yourself and you want to change them to be the other type, you don't have to delete them and change them and that kind of thing. If I just move me out of the way for a second, in the bottom corner down here, you can click on the single player button, and then when you get the dialog here, if you just press escape, then you have now a single-headed player here. And if you expand the sopranos, for example, from here, you can drag them down to the empty-handed player, so you can make them a single player. And vice versa. If you need to do the other option, then at the bottom down here, there's also an option to create a new section player. You can then just press escape. You can expand this singer and put them back, or put them into a new section if you've got them. And you can drag these around at any point if you need to sort the order of the players. If they've been imported from another project and they've come in a different order, then you can do that as well. And if you get any empty-handed players that you don't want, then you can just click on the little bin down here. You probably also want to delete the part layout as well, so player and part layout, so that they're both gone and it's nice and clean and tidy. If you have been adding and removing players, you may also want to reset the playback template so you don't have extra samples loaded that you're not using. And you can do that in the play menu, go to playback template, and generally just leave the option that's already there and just press apply and close. I don't need to do that right now, but if you press apply and close, it'll unload all the samples, reload only the ones that are currently needed for the players in your project. So you've got section players, single players, and in this case, obviously singers. I suppose the other advantage with the single players, if you needed them, is that if a singer was going to double on something else, not as common with choir, then you would also want a single player for that rather than a section. By default, we're using the sections. I suppose if you have a lead voice, and when you create a new instrument or a new singer down here, in the singers section, there are a bunch of other options which also include voice and lead, and they are often just a single voice, and maybe you're attaching that to a different VST sound, for example, of a solo singer, so maybe you want to change them for that. And if you're doing like a PVG, a piano vocal guitar style lead sheet style thing, then you might use one of those instruments, and they may well be a single player. But for our purposes here, when we well, for all of these players, it's more useful in the choir sense, probably to have the option of divisi should you want it, and Dorico would also add the arrows to split and rejoin those at the ends of the system if you needed them, and it would do those automatically as and when they are needed. But in this case, you maybe want SATB, and you would have seen in the templates to start off with, and they're also in the file menu here. When you go to new from project and you go to choral and vocal, there's some other options, so SSA, TTBB, various other ones, accompanied, unaccompanied, with piano, with organ, various options that are in here. And there's a barbershop one as well, and I've made a new barbershop one for short form, because sometimes what you want isn't 4 staves, it's a kind of a short form kind of almost score type where you've got 2 of the singers on the same staff. That also sometimes happens with SATB. Now, what some people might want to do is use the condensing option in Dorico. Unfortunately, the condensing option probably doesn't really help you, because the lyrics are probably going to be different in enough cases and may also collide and that kind of thing. So I actually wouldn't use the condensing option with singers. I'd probably do something like this and set up a little template instead. So what I'll do is I'll take the soprano singer here. I've expanded that. I'll click on these 3 little dots, and I'm going to go to Edit Names. And in the Edit Names dialog, I'm going to say soprano and alto. And then here, the short name, I'm going to put S.A. And then for the tenor, or the bass, depends which way you want to do it. I'll do the tenor this time, but I think often people may also want to use the bass one instead. Probably depends which clef you want to use, really. Actually, let's say we would just want the bass clef, so we'll take that one. So we'll edit the name here, and we'll put tenor before that one, and then just press enter, and then we'll put T dot and press enter, so it puts them on different lines. So now we have a soprano, alto, and a tenor bass, and then later on, now often in the choral music these are turned off, but if they were turned on, and we'll do that in a second, then we'll see the short labels, and we do that in the library menu. And when you go to the layout options, you can choose in your layout options here for the layout you're on. So I'm in the full score at the moment, and often for this style you probably will be using the full score layout, but not all the time. You can say for staves and systems whether you want the full and abbreviated labels. So if we just temporarily turn those on, then you'll see you have the labels here. Now, we don't really want these other 2 players in this case, so we can either remove them with the option at the bottom down here, just behind me, isn't it? There you go, with the trash can, or you could just remove them from the full score. So you can click on the full score and you can remove them from there, which they're still in the file, They still have parts available, but depending on, if it's just this layout you don't want them in, or if it's the whole project you don't want them in. So this now gives us the option of just saying soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and having it this way, and looking like a grand staff effectively for what's going on in here. As I said, you could also take these two and you could just delete them, and they're part layouts if you wanted to, if you don't need them at all. So this would be another option. I'm just going to turn off those other labels again, because I think it's fairly common not to have those two labels. So we've just got the full labels and not the short labels. And it may be that actually you just put SATB at the beginning and you don't actually put the full labels at all. Your choice. So that, I think this is a common style and not actually something that's often set up by default in Dorico, but something that you might want to set up. So if you want to set this kind of thing up, then maybe that's something you want to do once. And then if you go to the File menu and Save as Project Template, you can then choose from the dialog the category you want to put it in. If you start typing C, then you'll get Choral for the category that already exists, and then you can then write whatever name you want to put in this. So this could be, SATB short form with piano or whatever you want to write, and you can put that in there, and it will then save as a project template. Now I've already done this once, and so when I go to New from Project Template, in the choral and vocal section, I said I created a barbershop short form. So the barbershop quartet one is tenor, lead, baritone, bass as 4 staves, but the short form version I've made here, I'll click on, is, here we go. So it's this style. So they have these labels, and now if I was to start writing music for this one and start adding some bars, so I've used the Shift M pop over and typed 4/4, and I've used the Shift B pop over for bars, and I've put in bar numbers. And what I also added into this template is in the library layout options, I've used the bar numbers option and said every bar. I've also, in this particular case, to follow a particular style, I've reduced the minimum distance from the staff, so that then they're sitting on top of the bar line here. So that's an option that was in a Barbershop Harmony Society template that they'd done, and said, this is the kind of specific style that they were looking for. They also like quite a lot of space at the top for the titles and various other bits of information that would go up there. I haven't added them all, but what you can see is that this template is slightly different. So when I set up this template in engrave mode, you can see I've made a larger space at the top. I could probably add some other tokens into here. And the way I've done that is if you go down here to the first page template, then you can change the size or add in other tokens, other areas, whatever you need. Maybe you want a logo or something else for this title page, or first page, I should say. And so when I then went to File and Save as Project Template, it saved that information as well as the new singer combinations that I'd set up here and everything else. So now I have a project and a template that I can use just to get started every time, should I want it. So all of these kind of things, I think, while you might want to, spend some time initially setting something up that's the style that you want, you can then just make it a template that you can use for any of your future projects. There are also options for any of these things where you can use the page template sets, and you could take the set, and at the moment I've only edited, effectively this is the full score, because they don't bother with, in this style I believe, they don't normally bother with individual parts, so you're using just the full score. But either way, full score or parts, you can import and export these templates as well. So if you've made them and you want to give the template to somebody else, or you've started another project and now you want to apply that template to it, then that's another way of doing it. You can import the template into your project. You can also import your project as a flow into your template. So if I open this file and then I went to File, Import Flows, I could choose another Dorico file and I could import that into my template if I wanted to do it that way. So it's quite flexible in how you do it. Now there's various other things style-wise that you might want to change. So I'm just going to go back to my other project for a second. So let's have a look at putting a few things in first, and then we can change some styles of things, because you may not necessarily want our defaults. So I'm not really going to do much note input in this particular session. There are some other videos on kind of how to do note input, but the few particular things that are different, or you want to know probably for choral, we'll just look at those briefly. So I'm just going to double click on the staff here just to get the caret line. If you've watched any of the previous sessions, I have a shortcut to remove signposts when I don't want it, but they're in the view signpost menu. So if you see me turning those on and off, it's because I've got a little shortcut to turn those on and off when I need them. So I double click at the start here to get the caret line, and now I can input notes. And by default, you're inputting into the up stem voice. So effectively, for us at the moment, this is the soprano singer. So if I was to put some notes in here, oh, fat fingers, well done me, playing with my left hand. Well, delete that one. So you can just click a note and delete it. So while it was the up stem voice, because there's no other voices in here, all the stems are down, which makes sense. But now if I turn the caret line on again, and I want to enter some more notes into here for the alto, for example, then you need a new voice. Now, not this kind of voice. This is where things are a bit confusing, I suppose. You need a new voice, as in a new rhythm on the staff to be able to write into. So the first time I'm doing this, I'm going to press Shift V to create, and it says plus, a downstem voice. So now if I was to enter a different note down here, then I'll get that as a different voice, a different rhythm on this staff. Finale would call these layers, I think. Sibelius also calls these voices for the different stem directions. So you can enter notes here. I'm not really sure what I want at this point, but there we go. And Dorico's automatically flipped the stem directions for you, so that now you can see which one you're using. Now on this staff, when I double click somewhere else to input notes, you can tell which voice you'll be entering into. So be careful you're entering into the correct voice. And now you only need to press V. Don't press Shift V again, because that would make more voices. Just press the letter V, and that will toggle that note, and so then you can enter notes in that voice or the other voice. So this would be the upstem voice, and if I pressed V, this would be the downstem voice. And obviously Dorico's then putting the rests in accordingly to fill the rest of the bar. You can remove those rests if for some reason you didn't want them or you don't need them. Then you can choose a rest. You can go to the edit menu and you can go to remove rests, and it will remove those. And it does that by setting the properties of the voice options, so starts voice and ends voice. And you can also see those in the properties panel right down the bottom down here. If I click on this little arrow, then in this section down here, there's starts voice and ends voice properties, and you would find that those would be turned on if you'd started to use the voice remove rests option. So I have a shortcut for removes rests. If I choose this one now, look, it says starts voice because the rest has been removed. So if you want to bring that voice back, that rest back, you can just turn that off and you get the rest back. You don't need that very often, but I just thought while you'll be working more in voices in this particular combination, it was worth mentioning. So for all of these kind of note entry type things, there's lots of videos on how to do those, how to work with voices, and and that kind of thing. Now, when you get to the lower staff, you still only have one voice. So at this point here, any notes you add at this point are going to be in the upstem voice, and you can't just press V, because in this staff, none of those extra voices exist. So again, the first time and the first time only, you need to press Shift V to add a new downstem voice, and then when you put that in, you'll then get that wherever you want it. And then you can of course move it later if you want to. I don't get much lower than probably there, to be honest. Maybe Anthony can probably, I'm sure he can at least get F, if not further. But anyway, and then you can just press V and you can toggle between the available voices again, now in this staff, if I press the up arrow, or in this staff. So I now have two available voices. If you want to see the voices you're working in, just to be clear, then you can go to the view menu, you can go to note and rest colors, and you can turn on voice colors, and that will also show you the voice colors in different colors, so you can tell exactly what's going on, which voice you're working in at any point. Now there are some other options that you might want to use for the notes themselves. Obviously, there is notes out of range, so if you take one of these singers particularly high, then they will go bright red, and so will the singer. And as you bring them down, they may go slightly less red in some cases. I'm not sure what the range is. Yes, there you go. So they're kind of starting to go red, and then they come into a slightly more comfortable range again at this point. So the somebody's asking about the voice colours. When you go to the Dorico preferences, if you go to the colours section here, then as well as the paper various options and the background colours, you can set up the voice colours here. But these, what you're setting is the voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, voice 4. So you're still going to end up with these top notes and these top notes being the same colour. You're not going to get a different colour for these ones. But you can change the colours that they use for that first voice in each staff if you want to. And that would also change the piano. It would change them in all cases. You can, of course, also, when you're inputting notes, and you've got the caret line on here, and I'll just change the stem direction with V, you can use Shift down, and then you can enter notes across one or more staves all at the same time. So now if you press 2 notes, then it would input both of those, and I should probably change the octaves. So if I press a 2-note chord, you get 1 note on each, and if I pressed a 4-note chord, then I'd need more fingers. That was 5. So you can input notes across more staves. There are also shortcuts if you want them to move notes, either cross staff beam or actually move notes between staves. So if you want to move one because the range was incorrect, then you can do that. Or you just want to be in a different staff, so I can move these ones, for example. You can do the same this way around. You can choose one of these other notes and you can move it into the lower staff if you want to, so there are shortcuts for that. There's move to staff above, move to staff below, and they're all paste special options. So that's the literally moving, but there's also cross staff options. So move to staff above, for example, is Alt N or Option N. And if you just want cross staff beaming, then that's just N and M, where N goes to the staff above and M for mother goes to the staff below. So there are all sorts of those options, and also if you need to switch voices at any point, you can select a note and you can also just press V, and that will move it into the other voice. So if you have one note you want to move into a different voice, just press V, it will move that, or if you select more notes, it will move them all into that voice. So you don't need to cut them out and paste them back in again or that kind of thing. You can just press V and it'll take a couple this time. It will just move them into the other voice if it's available on that staff. So there are some other videos on voices and how to do those kind of things, but I thought that was you'll be working more in voices in this style than you would if for many other instruments where you would use condensing. Now also with the notes themselves, there are some other options in the library menu in engraving options, which is on my other monitor. Here we go. Now in here, what you also have if you go to the notes section, as well as the larger note heads, note names and figure note colours, which we don't probably want today, there are shaped note heads based on the scale degree. So there's some 4 shape and 7 shape options here. So you can choose whichever one of these you want. So let's say, for example, the Funk 7 shape, and press apply, and that will apply to your project automatically. So if you're working with any choirs where they use shaped note heads for things, then you can choose one of these systems and it will automatically do that for you. So there's some various options here. Let's choose a different one. So if that's the kind of option you want, you don't have to run a plugin or something else. You can just choose them, and if you want to turn it off again, you just go to the larger note heads. Larger is actually the default ones in Dorico, not default. So larger is the one you want. Probably press apply and close, and they'll go back as they were. And you can do that with the note names as well inside, or the figure note colours if you needed those. There are individual colouring options if you want them, but you often don't. But if you do want to use those, then down here in the properties panel, just behind me here, there's a colour section, and you can turn that one on if you need it, and you can press the little black area here and you can colour a particular note head or selected note head in whatever you need. Probably don't need that in this case, but just while we're talking about colours, you can do that too. But the shapes, you can use those. Don't be confused by the fact that you can choose one or more note heads, right click and go to note head, and you can change it here too. This is more if you want to kind of override for a particular purpose. So if you needed a diamond notehead or a cross-shaped notehead for something, maybe it's because they're whispering something and it's not really a specific pitch or something, then you might choose an option for diamonds or crosses or something in here and put them in that way. That might be an option. That's different to the automatic system that was in the library engraving options to show the pitches with various shapes. You can also make your own if you want to. If you want to make your own notehead options, you can do all of that as well. So in the library menu, there are options for notehead sets, and you can make your own notehead sets of various shapes and things. I'm not going into that one today. So I think the other things that you want to do will be, for example, things like adding dynamics. So if I choose a note and press Shift D, I could use the panel on the right hand side, but I'm not going to use that panel. I'm just going to press Shift D, and you can enter your dynamics. And when you enter the dynamics for singers, they will tend to be above the staff automatically because the lyrics will normally be below. So if you enter any dynamics like this, you don't have to specify otherwise. Even in fact, if you're on one of the other voices, if you've gone down here, then you'll tend to find that all of those will be above, which will be very useful. You probably want to be clear exactly, who's singing what and what the dynamics are, but they will be above the staff. So lyrics will be below the staff. So if I choose a note and I press Shift L, then I can type the lyrics. So this, if I have a little popover I'm typing into, if I press the space bar, it moves on to the next note. So verse 1. And when I press the spacebar again, it moves to the next note in that voice. So if I say this, and I press the spacebar again, it's moved on to the next note for that singer, because I started by choosing that note in the soprano or the upper voice here. And so it's moving to the next one in that voice. So if you wanted these ones, you may need to select that one and then press Shift L so that you're at this point here with the popover. Now you'll see that the popover, let's go back here, the popover itself, when I do Shift L, has a little 1 in it here. So if I press the up arrow, it says chorus, and if I press the down arrow, it says 2. So you get options for changing between the chorus and the lyric lines for verses just by pressing the up and down arrows now. So if I keep pressing down, it will keep going. I did once just sit there for a while, see how far you can get a very long way. Don't do that because your staves will just keep getting farther and further apart the more verses you add. We'll look at boxed options in a minute for putting them somewhere else on the page. But this is verse 2. Now you can type them in, you can copy and paste them from here if it's very similar lines again. If you have the lyrics already written out in a text editor, so here's some text in a text editor. If I just copy this, so I'll just press copy, so Control C or Command C, and then in Dorico, when I'm entering the lyrics, Shift L, in verse 2, I can just press paste, and every time I press paste, oh sorry, I'm in the chorus, sorry, I didn't want the chorus. Let me go back again. Oh dear. I pressed up, didn't I? Not down. If you press up, you get chorus. If you press down, you get verse 2. So now I press paste, and I get the first syllable, and then every time I press paste, I'm going to run out. Channel would be if I'd added any more notes. So you can paste in syllable by syllable, and if you need to, you can still add in other hyphens if you need to extend them. So if you needed the hyphens to be over more notes, you can just press hyphen before you press paste again. If you need a melisma line at the end, you can just press the space bar and it will do that. And then next time you press paste, it will get the next syllable from the clipboard. So that's an option you can use. I'm just going to, for a second, switch down here to Galley view. I don't need this section either, so I'll move that. Now, if you're working in Galley view and you're starting to get collisions with things because you're adding more verses, it's just because Dorico is not doing quite as much of the automatic collision avoidance. So in page view, it's going to be doing that kind of thing automatically. In Galley view, it might not be. And I just thought it was worth mentioning because you might run into this kind of thing. If you want to increase that gap, then you can, in library layout options, you can go to vertical spacing, and there's an option here for the ideal staff gaps in Galley view, and you can just increase this. So I've made it 175%, for example, and then you'll get more of a gap between them. There's still some little collisions here, but you don't really need to worry about them too much because in page view they won't happen. But just so you can kind of make a bit more space if you need it between those two. Now let's just say we've got something else happening here, and they're singing some more notes. Oh yeah, maybe not quite that high. That's a bit high. Let's say it's here. What a jump! Yeah, they'll hate us for that. Let's do that. We'll make it a little bit nicer. And let's say, just for sake of argument, they're going to sing something similar down here. The shortcuts, by the way, for moving notes and moving things around and stuff, Option up and down, or Alt up and down. And then if you need octaves, because I've been moving things in octaves quickly, and you'll possibly need this a lot for choral, it's Option with Command or Option with Control. So I suppose on some computers it would be Alt with Control, Control meaning big, and then you can use the arrow keys and you can move those notes by octaves. So anyway, when you then got to a point where you need it, you can press Shift L, you can press up, and you can say this is the chorus, for example. And then you'll find that this will be positioned but also italicized, and when you're back in page view again, you'll find that it will be also italicized here. And if you had verses and choruses on the same line, then it will automatically put the chorus in the middle between verse 1 and 2, so it will do all of the positioning correctly and that kind of thing. There's another nice option which is for these verses, and let's make this a bit clearer what these verses are. If you go to the library menu and engraving options, then there's a bunch of options for lyrics, of course, what the alignments are, so whether the whole word starts of middles of ends of syllables are centered left or right, what happens with extender lines, the positions of things, the vertical position when you're in page view, all of those kind of options are in here. What to do with hyphens, and all sorts of various other options in here. So there's all sorts of things, but there's also verse numbers. If you want to get here quickly, click on verse numbers here. If you want to show verse numbers, just choose this image here and then press apply. If you don't like the full stop, then choose this image as well and it'll remove the full stop after the number. But we'll keep it. So now we can see this is verse 1 and 2, and this isn't, of course, it's the chorus because it's italicized. If you also need it, you can do lyric translation lines. So when you do Shift L and you've got this option here, if you press Alt or Option down, then you get 1 star, which is a translation line. So if I translation, for example, so that's italicized, not to be confused with the chorus, but it's italicized underneath the verse that it's talking about. Obviously doesn't need a number here because it's the same verse number. And in the properties panel at the bottom here, you can see that this is verse 1, and that this one is also a translation, and this one is verse 2. And whether or not it's a whole word or the start of a word, it knows that down here as well. And also, for example, these, it also tells you if this is the chorus. So there's lots of flexibility here for various things you want to do. I'm just going to find a quick example which had... this one will bear with me a second. Yes, here we go. So when you're doing things like lyric translation options, here's a quick example. So here you've got the lyrics here, and underneath you've got the original text written as a translation underneath there. So for all of those kind of things, the lyric translation lines can also be very useful. You're not having to use verse 2 for that, and you can get confused with those. There's a specific option for lyric translation lines, which is very useful. Also, there's options for for different fonts for those, because obviously this is a different style, and the fonts can be changed in Dorico as well. So if you don't like the text font or the music font or anything else that we've been using in these examples, then you can change those. The hub, when you first start, has an option on the right-hand side to change some of these. So it might be that when you were in the hub at this point, that you were changing the music font and the text font. But if you've already started your project and you're well into that, then you can also, from the library menu, you can choose the music font, and you can choose a different option. So maybe, for example, you'd like to use Sebastian. There's also some finale options here, so if you want to use Finale Maestro, you can use that. And you can also, there's the option to update the text fonts when changing the music font, if there are suitable text fonts for those as well. So this one is changing the text as well as the music. So if you want to change those kind of things, you can change that. If you only want to change the text font instead, So then you can also do that. So from the library menu and paragraph styles, you'll find there's all sorts of styles for different types of text and different options and things in here. In fact, let me just go back for a second. I'm just going to press undo, so it undoes. So I'm now back on the standard fonts. So if I only wanted to change text styles, then in here, while there are lots of paragraph styles for things, lots of these, for example, lyrics, they have the specific style size, but the font itself is automatically using the parent font of default text here. So actually all you probably need to do is go to default text if you want to change lots of them and change the default text. So if you wanted to, for example, use Old Standard or something else for your text fonts, if you change the default text font, then you'll find lots of the things update. These music symbols won't. They're a different font style, obviously, but lots of the text items for the lyrics, for the staff labels, for the titles, Untitled Project 1, all of those kind of things, they would all update all at the same time. So that's a quick way of doing those kind of things and getting the right kind of fonts globally across the project. Of course, if you still need to change individual items, then you can also do that again from the library and paragraph styles menu if you want those. So there's some different options there for font styles, music styles. A different look can make quite a difference to the piece often, and you can change those quite easily. You can also, if you need to, so let's say, for example, any of these bits, like a dynamic, if you need to move it, then you can, for example, just press F and flip it. If you need it for some reason to be the lower on the staff rather than above, maybe not as common, but occasionally. If you've got lyrics that you need to happen that only happen to one instrument, so for example only the soprano in this case, then you can flip them and you can decide if you want verse numbers here or not when you flip those kind of lyrics. So again here, for example, and you can decide again if you want the verse numbers or not. So you can flip things either way, because often the soprano might be singing slightly differently to the alto or the tenor or the bass, and so you've got options for those as well. So when you're doing those, and let me just show you an example with some of those. Bear with me a second. Yes, this one. Then it means that when you're adding your lyrics, you might initially have put them in on, underneath the music, but you can just press F and you can then flip them to be the other side. So you don't need to drag them to anywhere else. So here we've got lots of examples where they're all, initially they're all just in the middle so that they're the same for everybody. So all of these will have been added, and when you just choose an individual item, they'll all have been added just to this top staff, and they're sitting nicely in the middle here. But at this point here, I'm just going to turn off my signposts. You see we've got some dynamics up here as well, just keeping out the way. But sometimes the lyrics need to be above, so they can just be flipped above. And I think there's some other examples, maybe. Yeah, and these have been flipped below because obviously they're singing the words, different words or at different times. So for all of those kind of things, they have been automatically flipped below the staff. They're automatically below the staff, but if necessary, you can flip things either way. Now you can individually move things, of course. So in engrave mode, when you choose something in engrave mode, you've got options to manually drag things left and right, but normally you wouldn't want to drag things up and down, so you can see that's constrained, but you can move things that way. So, but you won't need those kind of options because for just getting them above the staff, because you can just press F and you can flip them. And for the default spacing below the staff or above the staff, and what you want those default spacing options to be, you can use the library menu, engraving options, and then there in the lyrics section we looked at earlier, that's where you can set what those default space options are below the staff. Let me just move on to a couple of so we've done copying and pasting lyrics, but also if you need to edit a line of lyrics. So if I just right click on any of these lyrics that I've chosen, and you can change some of these options as well if you need to change some of the lyrics to be, a different line or a translation line now or something else. But there's also edit line of lyrics. So in here, you've got a text box here where you can edit the line of lyrics. And this is counted how many syllables there are in this line. And it's saying the current number of lyrics is 74 and the target is 74. So if you chose to remove any of these, which I'm not really going to do because it's not a language I'm very easily going to type in, but let's say, for example, if I remove one, it says the number of lyrics is now 673 and the target is 74. So I can't press OK now because things wouldn't be in alignment. So you need to make sure you've got the same number. But this can sometimes be useful to make a few changes. Like maybe you've made the same typo several times. I know I've done that before. And you can go into here and you can change a few of those. Or maybe the hyphen wasn't quite in the right place to divide the words up or anything like that. You can make quicker changes sometimes in here than you can editing individual lyrics multiple times, and it will just keep tabs on the number of options here. You can change them all completely. You can change all the words completely if you want to, as long as you end up with 74 syllables in the end. Then when you press OK, it would replace all of those. You can, of course, double-click on a word and you can edit it back in the popover, or if you choose a word and press Enter, then you can edit it in the popover. There is a right-click option, but that's even slower to edit those. And when you're in the popover here and you press the left and right arrows, you can move between those particular lyrics. And if I press the down arrow, you can move around to other verses. I think that might be, is that one a translation line, I think? Yes, it looks like it because the two languages. So this one down here, yes, is a translation lyric. So if I was in the popover, it says 1 star. So I press Option up and down to move between those, and then left and right here to edit the individual lyrics. So you can do them that way as well. So edit a whole line or edit that particular bit. And if you needed to, there's also an option in the File menu to export your lyrics. So if you needed to export them all as text to use somewhere else, you can also do that should you need it. I suppose you could also copy and paste them out of the edit line of lyrics dialog if you wanted to, but that's only that particular line. Maybe you want to export absolutely everything. So there's an option for that. And this one you can also see that they've done a similar kind of SATB style option, and there are options for whether you want to left align them, right align them, or center them, and those kind of things in the paragraph style as well. You may find, I don't know if it's in this project, so let me just have a look. Yes, you may find sometimes that there are system breaks added, or you need to add system breaks. And there's a couple of reasons to add system breaks for things. One, obviously, is to make a system break, because that's where you would want a system break to be. But there's also a couple of other useful things with these system breaks. One is that if you choose the system break item here in the Properties panel, but only if you're in Engrave mode, then you'll find down here there's a staff labels option. So if you needed to restate the staff labels for some reason at this point, because you've added a system break, a point at which to do so, you can then turn on the staff labels, either full abbreviated, or you can also turn them off if they were already on at that point. So that's sometimes a useful option to bring back staff labels if you needed them. But also, if you double-click on a system break, then you will get the manual staff visibility dialog. And this can be useful because sometimes, in fact, may well be in this piece. Let me just have a look back in setup mode. Yes. So in this piece, there's soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and let's have a look. Let's go back to the beginning and have a look at this one. But there's also joint instruments, if you like. So the joint type of staves that we've made, sopranos and altos, tenors and basses, and the piano. So when you're in write mode and you go to Galley view, and I'm going to turn off this lower panel, you can now see all of the instruments that we had in this project, and at various times you may be using the bass staff, the tenor staff, alto or soprano staff, and then you might want to show them on a combined sort of grand staff style. So one of the ways you can do that is by using the staff visibility options. So I'm just going to go to page view. So you can see at various times here there was tenors, basses, SATB for a system here, and then it's gone down to this option here. Now this would be done automatically because of the hide empty staves option. So in the library menu for the layout options, for vertical spacing, staff visibility, there's a hide empty staves option here. And this is set to all systems. So if a system is empty, if an instrument is empty, a player is empty, in that system, it will be hidden. So that SATB, they've all disappeared, and the SATB joint grandstaff option is showing because of this. So that will basically, in a lot of cases, do exactly what you want. If you need to override it, if for some reason you need to show one of the other staves at that point for clarity, then you need to add a system break. So if you go to engrave mode, you can press Shift S, or you can press the system break option over here, create system break. Oh no, what's happened? Yes. So this problem is when you've got things which are then saying, oh, I was waiting for the next system break. So when you choose a system break, I'll show you what happens here. There's a wait for next system break, and if you turn it off, when you turn it on and off, it can give you issues. So for this one, it's waiting for next system break, and the one I just added was going to do it. So when I added one here, I said, oh no, look what's going on. So it's because of these wait for next system break options. It's because of the formatting in this particular option. Normally, you just toggle this off. Don't bother waiting for the next system break. It's not a problem anymore. But that's what's happening. When you add a system break, it's waiting for the next one to know when the next system break happens. And you can get into that kind of issue. So regardless of, this is the kind of thing you're going to be doing at the end of the project. But if you get that, you can press undo, because it will remove it again. Or you can just click on the system break and remove it if you don't need it. Or you can toggle that wait for next system break. But at any of those system breaks, you can then double click on it and set the manual staff visibility. So you can decide which staves you want to show or hide at that point. Now, you may end up with a bit of a mess for a minute if you've added other system breaks later, like I have in this project. So really, you probably want to work from left to right in your project time-wise. But you can then choose at any point to reset, show or hide any of the staves that were here. And so you can decide, instead of just Dorico automatically hiding and showing things when they're empty, you can decide when you want things to show. Now don't forget, there's also an option anyway at the beginning to say, just after the first system, you can show everybody at the beginning if you want to, and then hide them, which is a common orchestral technique. But if you want to do all of the manual options, you can use those options. Create a system break, double click on it, use the manual staff visibility to show or hide things as and when you need it. If you need to change anything to do with the brackets between things, so where do we have? We've got SATB here. These bracketed options here, they exist just behind my head. So you can choose, for example, different options here. You probably don't want that one. But if you need to kind of group anything in particular, then you can do that from here. I am in engrave mode at the moment. I can see that the top panel's off. There we go. So I am in engrave mode as I'm doing these. And you can also drag these little points. So if you need to do that, you can. You can also choose a couple of instruments. I'm using Command or Control to select a couple of these. And so you can add some of these brackets between particular instruments if you needed to. If you don't want these anymore, you can just press Delete, backspace, and you can, so I selected it, press delete, and they'll go away again. Similarly, you'll find that for singers, normally the staves are not joined, the bar lines are not joined. In some cases, with some instruments they would be, and you don't want them to be. So I'll come back to that when we get to a project that's got one of those in it as well. Because there's one last thing I wanted to show in this one first. So in this particular project, in fact, no, let's do it in another one. Let's do it in another project. So a couple of other examples of things that you might want to do, and then we can get on to some handbell stuff as well. So in this project, it's on this monitor. So in this project, we've got title pages. We're not going to look into those today. There are other sessions on title pages. Box text, which will, kind of text in a frame, which we'll look at in a second. In this particular project, they've also got these dotted or dashed, really, bar lines, and there's no meter. So when you start Dorico, if you don't specify meter, then it's just open meter, and you can put in a bar line wherever you want it. So when you have the caret line on here, you can press Shift B, and you can type, for example, dashed, and you'll get a bar line at that point. I'm just going to press undo because I don't want it there. Also, all of these have been unbeamed. So really, they would normally, if I go to beaming and reset beaming, they would normally have been like this in this open meter style. And I think in this case, they've just gone to beaming and they've gone to make unbeamed, so that they've done this instead. But there are those right-click beaming options, and if you want shortcuts for those, you can set your own shortcuts in the Dorico menu preferences in key commands, or if you're on PC, it's in the edit menu and key commands, and you can set shortcuts for beam together or unbeamed or various other things in there. Now this one, the piano, is for rehearsal only, so you may want to kind of do some different options. So it's given you all of the defaults, which is the full score, the SATB options, and the piano. And in the full score, the piano's for rehearsal only. So in some cases, you want to make just one staff a different size, like the rehearsal piano, for example. So you can choose the piano here. If you right-click on it, you can go to staff size and change the size. So if we make that 60% is probably a bit too small actually in this particular case, so let's make it 75. There's also a custom option, so you can change the custom size. So that means that you've now got the piano smaller here than you had for the singers. If you wanted to make a new layout the other way around, for example, so I have the full score, but I'm going to make another full score, and I'm going to say that this one is, oops, I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to say this one is actually, let's say it's sort of for the piano, if you like. Then this will be all the default formatting because we've not applied the page template. But let's say all of these singers' staves, they all want to be smaller. So now the piano is full size and the singers are smaller, so you kind of get a choice either way of how you want to do it. In fact, at the moment, that's only done the top one, hasn't it? So I will just select some of the other ones. So you can choose one or more staves, which size you want one or more staves to be for whatever style, and that will only, I'm just pressing undo, that will only apply to the layout you're in. So you can have different options in a different layout, so you can set up exactly what you need. And it may be that you've got a full orchestra, for example, and the piano doesn't exist in that orchestra because they're only used for rehearsal purposes. You can set all of that up in setup mode as well, if you need to. So if you are creating your layouts here in the full score, you can also decide who is or isn't in it, and you can do that for scores or parts. So for example, if I add a part here, then I'll get a new part layout, an empty part, and I can just decide I want a couple of people in it, for example. So now I've got just a soprano and piano part. Or it may be that actually you don't want the piano, but you want all of the singers in a part. So now I've got an SATB part. So you can choose all of those, they're now selectable from here, and decide who you want in them, what sizes you want, and everything else. It's all quite flexible. But the individual staff sizes, because normally you set it all up the same in the layout options, so the normal kind of for everybody what setting the staff size is in the layout options in here, and you would set these options here. So the rastral size is 6.5 in this particular case for the full score, and for all of the parts is 7 mil or size 3. So you this is when you set them up globally for everybody what the size is, but when you just want to change one of them individually, right click on it and use that staff size option to change those. There are a couple of other things you want to do with frames and various things. I'm just going to bring up this project. So this one has a number of different lyric lines, also has a number of different font styles that have been changed. And also something else that's changed in this project. Now this one in setup mode was actually started as a piano. And the problem with starting as a piano is that by default, the bracket and barline change option, so I'm just going to delete that. You would have had bar lines for the piano all the way through, which you don't really want. Because they're going to get in the way of your lyrics. So if you do start with the piano, because that's the sound you wanted, and you could do it the other way around, start with the choir and change the sound, but if that was the sound you wanted and you didn't want the labels, you can go to engrave mode, you can choose a bar line, and when you press delete, actually what it does is just delete the gap in the middle, which is very handy. So now you've got space for all of your lyrics. So that's the first thing. The second thing was we've got multiple lines of lyrics. If you're going to do more than 3, these are going to get spaced out quite a fair bit. So once you've done 2 or 3 lines of lyrics, you're probably going to want to do this kind of thing. So you might want to set up a page template for this, but maybe what you would want in this one is in engrave mode. just do a manual override in this particular case. I should probably set this up as a template with just a music frame at the top. So if I click on frames, you can see there's a blue music frame here. The music is constrained into that area. Obviously, there's the title areas and other things. And then underneath, there's two areas for text here. So I've used this text frame, and I've dragged a box to make a text frame here. And when I double click inside it, then you can say I can just type and edit the text in here. So I could just, as you'd normally, you can choose your default text or your paragraph style if you've set one up, and you can choose your font styles and everything else. You have all the text controls, and you can set those up as a couple of different boxes to put all the verses, the other verses in. So that's another kind of common situation, I think, for that kind of style, for hymnal style. Now, for some of these things, if you're thinking actually some more templates and things would be useful, I would have a look for, and there's a link at the bottom of this session underneath the video. If you go to the PAS Music, there's a link to their products page. And on here, there are a couple of things. For example, Choral Publishing Suite. You can buy a template for that, and also the hymnal template for Dorico. So there's a couple of different templates you can buy for that. But again, you can also make your own templates for things. You can share templates for things. Making templates yourself, you are going to need to use Dorico Pro. So for the things in engrave mode, with the frames, and when you're doing that, and with the page templates down here and using those, you would need Dorico Pro for those. But if you want to buy somebody else's template, you can use them in Dorico SE or Dorico Elements, and you don't need to edit those yourself because they're already set up for you. I've just seen a question. Yeah, I cheated. Yes. David says, going back to the file when the Saints go marching in, on the box text at the bottom, down here, how did you get the numbers even? Yeah. Okay, I sort of slightly cheated, maybe. You can either, in the text box, indent all of the text, if you wanted to. Or what I've done is, you see here, this line here is default text, and this line here is using a different paragraph style, which is actually called negative indent. So what I've done there is I've gone to the library menu and paragraph styles, and I have created a shout when you spot it, negative indent. There it is. I created this. It's based on default text, so everything is the same except the first line indent is minus 13 points, and that's enough to position those numbers slightly to the left. Actually, that one's slightly out. That's annoying, but that's what I've done. And Joy Bruce, yes, you did get Dorico Pro when you converted from Finale if you did their Make Music offer, so you have all of the options for creating your own page templates should you need them. Last couple of little things on this particular choral style, and then I'm going to move on to the Handbells stuff as well. And there I'm not going to cover today Plainchant style. There is a font here available on Notation Central. There's a link in the description underneath the video. And there's, for this particular style, it's a font which abuses, if you like, the choral translation text to be able to write this style in Dorico. They're not notes as such. It's probably easier to kind of explain it if you watch their video where they've got the staff with the music on it and then an extra staff with any of the other options in there. There's some little videos in here. You can see they're actually typing text into the lyric tool, and that's positioning the Plainchant on the staff. If that's the kind of thing you're interested in, I'm not going to do a session on it at the moment because there is a video and some information there, and it is an extra thing that you'd need to buy from Notation Central. Dan's a clever guy, and he's put lots of information on there that you might want. Also, I wasn't planning today to do reference pictures we are doing. Sorry, we'll do that one in a second. There's a link below the video to responses. So if you're kind of doing the Precis responses style of choral music, then there's a blog entry that Daniel wrote a little while ago, and the information for that is all in the link underneath the video as well. So if you want those, click on those links and have a look at those. If we need to do another session on those, we can do another session on those. Now we're going to talk about a handbell type styles. So some of this is similar in a way, and some of it is a bit different. So I'm just going to bring up a file. So when you start in Dorico and you create a handbell player, there's a couple of things which, so here we've got handbells. It exists as an instrument in Dorico, but actually in the Dorico default sounds, there isn't a completely suitable handbell at the moment. We'll see what we can do to change that. So I've set up this template, and I'll make this available on our blog. It's not there yet, so bear with me, but I will also link it to this video. So if it's not there as you're watching it now, I will put a link into there when we've done it. But this template, it's got a space for the project title at the top. It's got some usual areas for lyricist and composer and that kind of thing. I've already written out an example here of the handbell. A handbell. Hand chimes, I suppose. Yes, but all the options that you'd want, which bells you're going to be using in this piece, and also this particular file, this particular template, also has the playback set to use the finale handbells that are in GPO 5. So I'm just in the very last stages of adding this bit of information to the playback template for that, so I can make it all available to you. So in here at the moment, the handbells instrument is now using the GPO 5 handbells, the Garrett Personal Orchestra ones, or the ones that came with finale anyway. It's in the GPO 5 playback template. So I will add some information to how to make these work, but this file, you can just load it up. It will automatically load the ARIA player with the handbells in there. It automatically also has, in setup mode, 2 flows. The first flow is all of these notes here, and they're slightly smaller, and I'll show you how we've done that. And then flow 2 you can then use to write the piece of music that you need. So if I just go to engrave mode here, you can see we've got a couple of different music frames here, and then the music would carry on from this point anyway onto other pages. And as a reminder to not double click up here to add your project title, go to Control-I or Command-I to add the project title, or it's in the file project info. So when you're writing your own piece, you can then go into here, you can go to the project section and the title, and you can add the information in there. So if you want to, you'll be able to download this file. You can then, if you want to, go to Save as Project Template. It will then show up when you're in your project template section. I've put mine in the choral, no I didn't, I put it in the personal section for handbells. So if you choose it from here, then you'll get this file. If you're doing this from the Dorico Hub, when you choose the section you've put it in, once you've saved it, and you choose handbells, make sure you untick the option to add a time signature and key signature, because it will add it to the first flow. It will end up adding it to the end of this flow, and that will just make a mess. So choose handbells, untick those, and create project, and then you will have a project that you can start with like this, like I just opened. Now I've put in an example here so that you can see this. You'll probably want to delete these notes and do them again. So I'm going to show you how we've done this one as well. I've already said today, if you right click on the staff, you can change the staff size and make it smaller. So I've already done that. I've chosen a percentage size for all of these. And you can see here there's confusing signposts. So the system break is just to make sure everything sits on this same line. So that's fine. The C major you can ignore because it's not actually in C major. It's not really in any key. This is actually a hidden tuplet because I'm going to delete all of these notes. And I'm going to say delete these ones as well in a second. So these notes here were entered just as quarter notes, so I'm going to delete them. So the way I've done this is so you can delete all of the notes from that beginning section, and you can then let me just find the page I was using. In fact, I think I used the one that Dan had mentioned in here. Yes, this reference pitches. So copying this example here. So if you were to enter this in Dorico, and this is in that article on scoring notes, link is underneath underneath the session here. So what I've chosen is quarter notes, and you can put in a pitch. I can change my MIDI keyboard to be the right octave. That would help. And I'm just going to put all of these notes in. Oh, I need... there you go. So I've put all those notes in now. There's 22 of them. Now the problem is underneath you only need 12 notes and you want them to be spaced out. So if you put 12 notes in, you'll only end up about halfway across and you'll have a big gap at the end. So what you want to do is when you've got the caret line turned on here, you want to enter a tuplet which is 12 in the time of 22 because you only want to put 12 notes in and in the same time where there were 22 notes. So it's 12 in the time of 22. And so now you've got a tuplet, and now you can put these notes in underneath. So I'll enter these pitches. There we go. And then you choose this tuplet line here, and in the properties panel, you can turn off the bracket and you can turn off the number so they don't show up. And that's why you get this little signpost. So now you have all the pitches that you need. And the last thing you need to do is select all of these notes like this. Make sure you don't select this. So I'm going to Command or Control click on it. Or you can filter the notes if you want to, but it's only that thing you need to turn off. And then in here, in engrave mode, for the notes and rests, you can just turn off the stems. So you can say hide stem, so they've all disappeared. So that's how I've done that little chart at the beginning. So if you need different notes, you can now delete those notes from that template and you can enter the other notes that you need. I mean, you can change these if you want to. If you need 12 notes, you can change these. You can drag them or option move them or whatever to show you those. There was also a couple of little lines at the end. So if you choose the notes at the end here, from the lines section over here, you can choose a bracket. So let's have this one here. And then it'll put a bracket over the top of those notes. I would actually suggest, when you do these, don't choose these two options here, which is attaching to rhythmic position. Actually choose the notes, so it attaches to the note heads instead. Oh, actually, no, sorry. In this case, you do want rhythmic position. It was another example. I'll show you the other example in a second. Sorry, this one you do want that, so it's attached to the rhythmic position for those notes. You can resize these in the same way you'd resize notes anyway. So you can use Option Shift left and right to resize those brackets if you get one the wrong size anyway. When you've got that line selected, at the bottom down here, and you can make a line that includes these if you want to, but if it's just kind of an override type thing, you can say in here that these are the optional notes. So you can just type optional and it will add it in the middle of the line here. If you want it to sit above the line, you can adjust the text position to be above. You can then, if you want to do the same down here, I'm just going to cheat an option click, so I get another one here. You can press F to flip those because they're very, very similar to notes and dynamics and lyrics that we've been using. Just press F to flip them. And this one you would want to change the text position to be below. So now I've got one over here which is above and one over here which is below. And if you want this to be, again, slightly different size, you can use Option Shift or you can drag these little handles at the end to make them the correct size for what you need. So that's those text items. The other text kind of line option was possibly more for singers, but no, actually no, handbells as well. When you've got some notes here and you've also got some notes down here, and you want to show lead lines moving, that the tune has gone to somewhere else, all that kind of thing. When you choose a couple of notes here, choose the note options for the start and end, and then whichever line you decide you want to do, it will then do a joining line for those. So whether it's a dashed line or whether you wanted a solid line or anything else, then you can choose them that way. But make sure in that case you've chosen these attached to notehead options. Whereas this one here, this bracket, you want probably the beat positions probably to attach those to, or like I said, you can manually move those. So there's lots of the detail of how to set up those kind of things in this example on scoring notes. There's a link under the video, and it shows you how to set these kind of things up. Now he actually does it right from the beginning of that point. But I will make this template, this Handbells template, available as soon as I can, probably tomorrow, so that you can download it, and I'll put a link underneath the video. So come back to this video, check out the link, or I'll make sure it's on the resources page or Facebook or various other places if you need it from there. So voice leading things, we've done those. There's a handbell chart. The sounds, if you have Finale, then you can use the Finale ones. If you've got another sound library you want to use, then you can change those. If you find a good one, can you let me know? Maybe we can make a little playback template for it and make that easier to choose and easier to use. Let me just check if there was anything in the comments at the end there. No, I think that should be okay. I'll also just check back for a second and see if there's any of the other comments and things that I've missed. So bear with me a second. There's quite a lot going on in this chat. I think Daniel's probably answered them all. Let me know. I'm just going to check and see if there's anything in here. If you have any other questions, type them in the chat before we reach the end of this. And as I said, I will add some time markers to various things in here. Yes, of course. So, in a default project in Dorico, there aren't some of the playing techniques that you'd also want for handbells. That's what I was going to do. So in this template file, I have added in the choral section some of these options. So, for example, when you choose some of these items here, you'll then get these labelled, so martello lift and martello, and various options that are in here, mallet lift and various things. So you can choose a note and you can add them from here. They also all have in this file, they also all exist with playing techniques that you can add from the popover. So you can press Shift P and you can start typing in here, and you can get these various options, and some of them are. So that's one of the ones that's text. So we should choose one of the other ones. So I quite like this one. It's not a symbol I've used very often for the bell tree, and I think I added that as bell tree. I did. So you can use the Shift P popover for those. Now they don't exist in a default project. They do exist in this project. And if you use this project, which I will make available to you, then you can also import these options using the library manager. So if you've started a project before, you can use the library manager in Dorico, and in here, if you go to differences, you can import all sorts of options of things that have been used, and and playing techniques and things. And you see there's a whole bunch of playing techniques that I might have added to various projects. I will show you how to add them manually in case you want to do these as well in your project, because these symbols don't exist by default in this menu over here, but they do exist in the font, both in Smoofle, both in our font and in the Finale Maestro font. So what I've done in each of these cases is I've pressed the little plus down here to add a playing technique, and I've found the option. So let's say we were adding this bell tree option. I know I've already got one. And then you go to the text option here, and you go to glyph, and you can then edit it here. And then I can remove the word bell tree because I don't need that. And from the range option here, this drop down, you can then actually, the quickest way is just press H, because it will take you to, the wrong one. Interesting. It did take, yes, of course, because there's more than one with H in it, isn't there? All right, H-A. Harp, H-A-N, handbells. So you choose handbells. I typed H-A-N to get there quickly. And then there's all the symbols in here. So you choose the symbol that you want, and you press Add Glyph, and it adds it into here. You can position it, you can resize it. I think maybe, I don't know, check the sizes, maybe I've got them correct. Press OK. You can change the font, but you'll need to choose a Smoofle font if you want these symbols to be in it. And obviously the font design needs to have included those. But so I'm just going to press OK. So now I've got this bell tree as an item in here. Now I'm just going to press cancel. I've already done this. The popover text is bell tree, and I've already added these options, so I'd end up with 2 of them. But that's what I did for each of these items to add them into this template. So this template has this item at the top for you to add in the notes that you want for your to show the bells that are being used, and it also has the playing techniques in them. Now at the moment, these playing techniques don't play back. If you have a library that needs them to play back, then that can be done, because you can add a playback technique here. You can also attach it to an expression map. I'm not going to cover that in this session because I don't have a suitable library that would show you those options, but they could be made to do that if you had a library that needs them. So if you do have one of those, please let me know, and maybe we can set that up as well. But those playing techniques, so they then exist. They're all consistent size, consistent style. They also exist when you changed libraries. So if you change music fonts, I will just check, but I think if I change this to Finale Maestro, Yes, so these change to Finale Maestro, and also these playing techniques can also be done in Finale Maestro if you want to. So you can change them to be different fonts. But when I chose these fonts, I've set them up to use Bravura so that they should be correct, even if you're using some other options in there. So, like I said, they all now exist in this choral section in here. You can move them into other sections if you like, but I thought that was probably a good section to put them in, and you can access them from the popover or otherwise. So yes, gyro damp, bells, bells down, isn't it? And yes, bell on table, bell suspended, all of those kind of things. They are all there as playing techniques as well. So thank you for that reminder. Let me just see if there's a question on that one. Bear with me. Any chance a future update will include an automatic create bells used based on the score? Yes, potentially, but not yes. Actually, Daniel's replied yes. I'm not sure. Not sure when. Damp on a stem. That's a little trickier at the moment. You can move them, but it will be. So when you put a damp symbol in, it's going to be attached like this. But you can move them because in engrave mode you can move these and you can position them on a stem should you need to. That one might be a little bit big. Can somebody let me know with these? Should I maybe make these a little bit smaller? When I make the file available, maybe somebody can let me know if they want them to be a little bit bigger or smaller or anything else. Yes, as Daniel's just said, you need to cheat and replace the buzz roll tremolo symbol. Maybe I can look into doing that in this template file. So there is a symbol for buzz roll. So when you're doing these kind of things and you do a repeat and you put a Z on it, then it goes on the stem. So we could potentially in this file change that one. So the way you would do that is in the library menu for the music symbols, you would find the buzz roll symbol and you'd remove it and you'd replace it with the damp symbol so that when you use a buzz roll it would use that symbol instead. Maybe I'll change that one in the template. I'll just check with the team first, but yeah, maybe we'll change it just in this template so that you could then just do Shift R and type Z for a buzz roll and it would give you the damp symbol instead of the buzz roll. That might be an option. Let me just check if there was any other questions. It looks like I think they've all been answered. So unless you have a new one, then a new question, and let me know. There are some diamond notehead options. So they were in the notehead. When you go to diamonds, you can change for diamond-shaped noteheads if you wanted them. Handbell playback symbols are notoriously bad. Well, maybe we can change that. Maybe we can find some nice ones. I think the questions are mostly being answered. Where will we find this template? I'll put a link below this video as soon as it's available. So you might need to come back and check this video. I'll also make it available on our blog, I think, so that there'll be a page on there. So blog.dorico.com. But if you also follow us on social media, I'll make sure it's on Facebook and that kind of thing. I'll put a link to it in there as well. So I'll aim to do that tomorrow. There's a couple of little things I wanted to tweak, and it may be then that if some of these symbols are, I don't know, if I've made them too big or something else, and they need tweaking, then I can just update that page, then update that blog item when they're done. Yeah, the question about the sounds are using. I'm just using the ones that are available at the moment in Finale. So I'm using those sounds, and that's also part of this template file and the GPO5 playback template that will do an update. So I think that's okay. Actually, on sounds, just to go back for a second, there was the barbershop. Does anybody have a good barbershop VST sound? There's one called Questionably Barbershop, and it is Questionably Barbershop. So I don't know if that's a suitable one or if somebody else has another idea for that one, but let me know. And yeah, and the same as we've said with handbells and other things, if there's other sounds that you think you want to use, then yes, please let us know, and we can maybe make a playback template for other libraries to just make these a bit simpler for you. So Hopefully there's no other questions on those. You can always email us on discoverdorico@steinberg.de. So the email discoverdorico, all one word, at steinberg.de, or get in touch on our forum, so dorico.com/forum. There's a link underneath the video to that one, and also the Facebook pages. You can get in touch with us on those. They're Facebook groups, community groups, where you can ask questions as well on there. So please join us on there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because then we know you like what we're doing, but also it means you can ask questions and various other things, and you get to find out if you click on the bell icon when we're doing the next sessions. There'll be one in about 3 weeks' time, which will be on lead sheets. So if you've got questions about chord symbols and kind of lead sheet style and those kind of things, then that will be in the next session as well. We'll be available for a little bit longer in the in the chat here, but once the session's over, then you can still get in touch with us, ask us questions or anything else. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope the session was useful, and hope you can join us for the next session. Thank you.